Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Thrive After Divorce, where we bring you the skills to not survive, but thrive. And today we have an expert on a topic that I'm excited to dive into and learn with you all as well. We have Sara McDugal. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, how are you, Lisa?
I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready to thrive on this topic with you. You are an author, a speaker, and an abuse recovery coach for women healing from toxic relationships in the faith community. You're very niche down, and it's a topic that really hits a lot of women going through divorce.
We actually have a bit of a micro niche even beyond that. That's our broader niche, but our micro niche underneath that is women who are healing after abusive relationships and trauma, who have kids, and who are also neurodivergent. We do a lot of work with women who are raising kids on the autism spectrum or who have other neurodivergent diagnoses. And many times these women recognize that a big part of how they have profoundly experienced trauma has been really impacted by undiagnosed neurodivergence of their own. And so they have integrated and internalized their trauma in a different way. So that is kind of our micro niche underneath the general faith community trauma recovery.
Do you find that a lot, that is a layer that's down? I've been doing this 12 years. I've studied it 12 years. But in my own world, it was just in this last year, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And I was like, that's no wonder. I had studied so much high conflict, narcissism, but I hadn't really studied emotional abuse. To realize, I just thought I'm dealing with this personality disorder but I didn't realize I'm dealing with my own emotional abuse. And it could take a lot of time and someone to tell you, like, hello, you've walked on eggshells for so long, you think it's normal. It's not.
Right. I think that's a huge factor that needs to be considered in a lot of situations. Certainly it's not everyone's situation, but I know we have done this for several years as well, and we came to this realization that there were like 2 or 3 specific personality types that top the charts. And they're some of the rarest personality types if you're into the Myers-Briggs personality types at all. But these few personality types there's this disproportionate number of INTJ, INFJ, INFP, ENTJ women that are in our groups. And so many of them end up raising kids who are ADHD, diagnosed on the spectrum, dealing with Asperger's or autism, depending on which country you're in on the how they call the diagnosis, dealing with sensory processing issues, auditory processing issues, different types of highly sensitive things. And so they're dealing with all of these health issues and the autoimmune issues. And then, of course, the spectrum and neurodivergence in whatever different, slice of that applies to their family. And they're dealing with all of that under the umbrella of trauma and healing and recovery in the faith community, where there can sometimes be a lot of heavy judgmental attitudes and critical attitudes to people. And as we started surveying our population of followers and audience and support group members, we realized, you know what? Somehow we have subconsciously attracted people who happen to be just like my co-founder and I. We're both on the autism spectrum. We're both INTJ personalities. We both have autistic kids. She has a granddaughter on the spectrum and a daughter on the spectrum. We're both survivors of trauma. We both have autoimmune conditions. I'm a cancer survivor. We both have kids with unique health conditions that make more medical fragility and medically needy, which means your workload is just higher. We both have ADHD in the family. And we're just like, what is with this cluster? Like, everyone is in this basket. And in our particular circle, our tribe has everyone in this basket. And So we realized we might as well be talking openly about this now that we've observed that they are common factors throughout our community. So once we started talking about it, all of a sudden it was like light bulbs going on, bing, 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 everywhere, because like you were just saying, discovering the emotional abuse and the PTSD side, we realized that our willingness to be vulnerable and to discuss this was giving articulate language and terminology and vocabulary to people who were experiencing it but didn't have words.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there was this increased strength in our shared community because so many people who fell into this basket and who were living inside this basket but didn't have terms for it were now able to express, this is me. I need to take my child to XYZ. Now I'm beginning to have answers because I'm starting to learn where to look for these solutions. And what we're dealing with, there's actually names for it.
Mm-hmm. We're not the first, we're not the only one.
It's not isolated and it's not normal. There are names for this, and there are paths to get healthy, or to at least learn, like some things like autoimmune issues and that kind of stuff. You may not ever get rid of it, but there are journeys to take. There are strategies for solutions to help manage or overcome whatever is possible for what you're dealing with.
It sounds like you brought a collective whole together in a beautiful gift basket, but people that needed to have faith and kept their faith, that has brought them together. And that is one challenge, like women facing divorce, even if they have all these things, they might struggle with what they've been told, what they've been taught, what they believe their belief is. And you talked about we can be criticized by the outside world by our faith, but that inner critic can be very hard on you too. So as I shared with you, this is hard for me to coach women where it's like, this goes against their belief, their Bible, their church, all of it. It's all of it. And yet I know they're not safe. They're, emotionally, physically, their soul, I'm like, this can't be what God wants for you as his child.
Yeah. So I was a clergy spouse for 13 years and in a previous life, and living in full-time ministry gave me a very unique perspective on working with women in the faith community, because that was my life for over a decade. And even before I was a clergy spouse, and honestly, all of the years since, have been focused on working with women in the faith community. But I share that because I very much was and still am a faith-oriented woman, a woman of prayer and of belief. And everything that we do at Wild in my organization, we consider to be faith familiar. We have a broad cross-section of different denominational backgrounds and different types of communities, different ethnicities, and we have audience members in about 45 countries. So we have, again, like a broad cross-section of cultural and ethnicities as well. But one thing that ties everyone together is that they are coming out of a faith community background. And I have seen women go through a variety of different paths on their journey through and after trauma when they experience trauma in the faith community. Some remain very, very strong and clinging to their faith. Some just want nothing to do with it and they blame their faith. And some kind of dismantle a lot of the messages that they were taught and then rebuild it. They debride it. In other words, have you ever had a burn victim? And when you're doing skin grafts over like an area of the body that's got like 3rd-degree burns. If anything gets infected or has any kind of pus or anything in it, you have to come in and you debride the burn and you wash it off with water. It's excruciatingly painful, but you're cleaning out the stuff that doesn't belong there so that it can heal back well. And I kind of like the term debridement better than deconstruction, because sometimes a deconstruction has the idea of just taking a wrecking ball to things, but debridement is rinsing away what was not healthy to keep the healthy tissue, to keep the wound clean so that it can heal well. And so when we create things at Wild, we focus very much on keeping things faith familiar, because I have found that even those who have a very antagonistic relationship with God tend to still be comforted by faith familiar things, because that's where they grew up, where they came from. Not everyone, but a lot of people. I find 3 big barriers for women who are trying to navigate betrayal, trauma, or divorce, and who are women of faith. Number 1 is the shaming nature of many belief systems. Number 2 is the insular nature of community. And number 3 is the heightened nature of their own conscience. And I want to kind of go back and go through all those. So let's talk about insular community first. I know I listed them in a different order, but let's start with insular community. In a tight-knit faith community, for many, many people, their entire social world and community is wrapped up in their faith community.
Yes.
Their friends, relatives, marriage, weekend activities, oftentimes coworkers, colleagues, their children's schools, they may be all tied up and connected with the tentacles. It's like tendrils of a plant or the tentacles of an octopus, whichever you prefer. But it's far reaching. It invades every part of their social, spiritual, emotional, and even physical activities. You may be working out with friends from church. You go to Bible study, you have a prayer meeting, your children are in Awana, or they're in a church-sponsored Scouts Club, or whatever it is. It's your whole life when you're an actively involved woman of faith. So if you choose to reveal the truth that you are living in abuse, that you have experienced betrayal trauma, you very often are facing at least the fear, if not the reality, that you are going to shatter not just the illusion of your home life, but your whole life.
Yeah.
Friends, work, school, everything is going to be cracked by going public with getting safety on this. And because of the belief systems, it's very, very common for churches to end up either maliciously or unwittingly supporting the abuser instead of the victim.
And either way, it's the same result. Whether it's malicious or unwittingly, it's same result.
Yes, absolutely. The pain may be a bit greater if you know that it's intentionally malicious, but the pain is excruciating regardless of intention. And so that insular community means also that many women don't have a place to go that's safe, that is outside the reaches of people who are going to tell their abuser. If all your friends are people from church, somebody's going to talk. And if you are actually in physical danger, that can be life-threatening.
And I think we go back to that person that's going to talk, whether they're doing it naively, trying to help you, whatever their intention, even if it's a good intention, same result.
Exactly. If
you have a bad intention, like it's the same.
It doesn't matter what they intended.
No, like if they thought, I just wanted to help you. Well, thank you, but you didn't.
Right. So in that, it can feel absolutely daunting to figure out a strategy for when and how to seek safety, whether or not you've decided to divorce. If
Right.
you find safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, spiritual safety, physical safety, sexual safety, all of these things can feel like insurmountable obstacles when your whole world is tied up with church and church isn't supportive.
No.
So that insular community, that's barrier number one. Belief systems and the shaming nature of belief systems is what I would call barrier number two. Here we have in the faith community, and I would include religious Jewish community and the religious Muslim community in this, because there is, again, a heavy emphasis on male headship, on masculine control and ownership of the family, in as well as in Christianity, and many factors, many stripes of Christianity. And there's the teaching that marriage is for life. This is a sacred vow, a sacred covenant. And you know what? I absolutely believe that it is. I am not here to say that, well, I just think all Christian women should take their marriage vows less seriously.
No.
No. I believe that the vows made at the altar are sacred and beautiful, and they are intended to be life-lasting.
Yes, intended.
They are intended to be life-lasting. But very often, we're not taught that for better or for worse is actually meant to be you and me side by side as a team, no matter what the world throws at us, rather than no matter what kind of cruelty or assault you perpetrate upon me.
That is big, because so many people hear, we said for better or for worse, for richer for poorer, but they don't go deeper to think of what you just said.
For better or for worse means we're going to stick together even if one of us gets sick, even if we lose a child, even if we both lose our jobs and we're living with cardboard boxes for furniture because that's all we can afford. We're going to have each other's backs no matter what the world throws at us, because we are a team. We are united. We face the obstacles together. That doesn't mean you get to rape me, assault me, deny me food, shelter, medical care, abuse our children, watch pornography, cheat on the marriage, break your vows in every way possible where you are not living in love, not living with cherishing, not living with protection, not staying faithful to your vows, and then say that I am the traitor because I put it on paper.
And I am really familiar with the narcissistic world, and that is the perfect setup for an abuser to do all those things and then look at you and say, we said for better or for worse. We
You
believe
have with my cruelty. Yeah.
And then make them, you're the guilty one. You're the one leaving. We said better or worse. And here you are leaving.
Exactly. And we'll get to that heightened sense of conscience and how that's used against you in barrier number 3. But still in this belief systems and the shaming nature of belief systems. Again, I want to reiterate, I am for marriage.
Yes.
Healthy,
yes.
Good, godly, safe marriage. What I do not believe that God condones is cruelty and assault, because God does not wish his daughters to live in evil. And how do we know that? Well, I've done, and I will give you a link so that you can add it into your show notes.
Yes, please.
I've done a detailed YouTube video that is an hour-long Bible study on all of the passages and verses in God's word about this. So I'm not going to take all of our time to duplicate that.
but it's there. It's a resource that we will get to
Yes.
people that are listening. Yeah.
But here's the thing. The Apostle Paul makes it very clear that if someone does not provide for their family, they are worse than an infidel. He also says that if you are married to an unbelieving spouse and they would like to live in peace, let them stay. But if not, you are free. And I'm paraphrasing. An abusive spouse is not living in peace, nor are they allowing you to live in peace. Also, if someone claims to be a believer and yet lives with an evil pattern of behavior, an abusive pattern of behavior, if they're living in, what are some of the things that the New Testament, the apostles talk about that are not going to go to heaven? Lying, cheating, defrauding, financial abuse, anger, aggression, abusiveness, divisiveness, sexual impurity, adultery, licentiousness, indulgence, gossip, greed, anything that is abusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the traits that will not result in salvation. These are an unconverted heart. These are the attitudes and actions of an unbeliever.
Even if they say they're a believer and live the
Regardless
life.
of they say they're a believer.
Right.
If their patterns of behavior are degenerate,
Right.
they are a believer.
No, I agree, but I just wanted to clarify what you're saying. That
Absolutely. I agree.
And can I go back to the word cruelty?
Mhm.
You said someone that, treats you cruelly or cruel. And my thought was, women are conditioned to put up with a lot, and they might not think it's cruel. Like they might think it has to be extreme to be considered cruel. And I would really want people to know you deserve love. Like if you think it's not right, it doesn't have to be the extreme cruel.
Right.
You don't have
Right.
to be shackled
And
inside.
I mentally throw a lot of things into the cruelty basket that other people may not.
Right. But I just want them to know if it's not right, if you wouldn't do it to someone or it doesn't feel right, put that in the cruel basket. Because over
Yes.
time, it leads
If
to
someone
cruel.
is dehumanizing you, is denying you autonomy and personhood, those are cruel things.
Yeah.
If someone is controlling your money and you don't have, and I don't mean, oh, we are broke and so we are living on a tight budget.
No, but when
I'm talking about if he has access to money and you don't.
Yeah.
If he has access to food and you don't. If he has access to transportation and friends and you don't. If he has access to medical care and you don't. If he makes decisions you're not allowed to make, then there is an imbalance of the power, and he is not fulfilling the vow to love and honor and cherish as equal humans, because we are both equally made in the image of God.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the words of Paul, if someone is living in anger, lies, self-love, pride, deception, licentiousness, adultery, sexual impurity, we are to have nothing to do with the works of evil, but instead to expose them.
That's scary.
Paul does not say that there's a caveat. If he paid for the ring on your finger, you are required to keep quiet, to cover up for him, to lie for him, to become complicit in the evil behavior by making sure everyone thinks he's a saint.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is living with patterns of behavior, regardless of what they call themselves, that show they are abusive, then they are living as an unbeliever.
Yeah.
And we are not generally taught these kinds of things, nor are we taught to just think very, very logically about the fact that if we have free will and God respects our free will, he wants love that is freely given, right? He wants us to love him, not because he created us as robots with no choice, but because we want to love him, because we are drawn to the beauty of his character and who he is, right?
Yeah.
So if God refuses to override our free will to force us to love him, is he going to override an abusive spouse's free will to force them to stop doing wickedness, to stop being mean, to stop being controlling, to start being godly, loving, and kind? Did God force Pharaoh to treat the Israelites well? Or did he give him a number of chances and then lead the children of Israel out of Egypt?
Yeah, that's where, when we were talking before we started recording, I said, when people say to me, but I prayed, and they just put it all into prayer, and I believe prayer is power and magic.
Absolutely.
But I also have to say to them, they are of their own free will.
And respect for each other as humans and as adults, as independent moral agents, has to go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to respect you, but if they show you that they are not willing to do the work, that they are not willing to stay in counseling, that they are not willing to respect your boundaries, then respect to them, because you are a respectful person, means respecting that they have chosen the side of wrong.
Yes. And that is it. And that's where the struggle lies, and how it's hard for me to even coach people to say, it really comes down to the same thing. They think we'd have more money if you were generous, or that's an example. And you
Right.
think, I'm going to pray and he's going to become generous. It's like, you have to respect that's who that person wants to be.
Yes.
And you are who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pray and pray, and I say you can send them love. You can
But
just,
you also seek safety.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you can have to love them, but you can send the relationship love, you can send healing, you can send prayers, but you can't pray and think, I'm going to turn my golden retriever into a poodle. It's just not going to happen.
Right. And this goes back again, where it's like, can a leopard change his own spots? No.
Yeah.
And so if someone has chosen to act abusively and to develop patterns of behavior that you can see there is a trend of this is a cycle, it has gone on for years, then that is who they have chosen to be. And respecting them includes respecting that that is the person they've chosen to be. If you choose not to be the same kind of person, then you are to have no fellowship with darkness.
And when that personality type, I have to give them credit as far as being honest. They are consistently honest in showing you who they are.
Yes, this is true.
You know what I mean? Like, they don't change. They don't want to change. They know what to say in the right situations, but their actions, they're actually really good with themselves for the most part. And they're being honest with, like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not changing. Believe them.
Right, exactly. Believe them. Believe what they say. You can believe some of what they say, but everything they do.
Yes.
The actions. And this may be too long for us to get into, but when you're talking about narcissism, now I'm not a psychiatrist, so I tend to avoid the term narcissism simply because I'm not qualified to diagnose. But if we're talking about someone who is deeply selfish and self-focused on that narcissism spectrum, one of the things that if we look at it from a gospel point of view, from a faith-driven point of view,
Yeah.
one of the things that can be very eye-opening is to recognize, a huge part of narcissism is lack of empathy, right? The
lack of empathy.
Lack of empathy.
Yes.
Either the refusal or the cultivated inability to engage in and feel the feelings of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of ways that plays out in abusive marriage relationships and in the divorce process. And that is, one, a person who cannot feel your pain. Like, they're just detached.
Yeah.
And
they really can't feel it.
And they don't feel your pain. They're numb. When you're sobbing and you're like, I just want to see some kind of connection and engagement. I want you to recognize that you hurt me and harmed me. And they're just like, are we done yet? Where's my coffee?
Here we go again with you.
Yeah. So a person like that, when they have killed their empathy and killed their conscience, numbed it one choice by choice until they no longer feel it, they cannot feel your pain, but it means they also cannot feel your love.
And your joy.
Or your joy. It's all about them. This translates over into the realm of the gospel as well, because it means that someone who has gotten themselves to that point of numbness of the spirit, of the conscience, where they don't hear the Holy Spirit, where they can't connect with right and wrong and the voice of God, and they don't have that empathy, they do not feel, they are not genuinely impacted by the idea that Jesus died for them, and they cannot feel the love of God either, which really cuts the cross off at the knees from a gospel point of view. That being said, there are basically 3 types of ways that we learn to hate sin. 1, someone who has great levels of empathy and teachability and humility may learn to hate sin simply because someone else tells them it's wrong. And recognizing and trusting that is wrong. Why? I know because I was told, because someone said so. The Bible said so, God said so, a parent, whatever.
Yeah. Grandma said so. It is.
Right. It is. It's wrong. The second is because I watched someone else feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
And watching their pain taught me I don't want to ever do that. And the third is because I experienced it myself and I did the primary research. And I wasn't satisfied with secondary research. I had to do the primary research. I experienced it. It hurt. It was bad. Not going to do that anymore. You can see this if you have 3 children and at the age of 2, every single one of them is fascinated by the hot stove. You can have 3 different responses. You may tell one child, no, hot. And they go, oh, not touching it. And you may have another child who is like, you say, no, hot. And they're like, really? Let me try. And they are insisting on experiencing it themselves. And you have a third child who watches that first one or the second one doing that primary research and they get burned and they're like, oh, I saw that burn. I'm never doing that.
That is such a good example. Such a good, and I do have 2 daughters and they each did the same thing around the same age, but in a different way. The second one, man, she amped it up to a different level. Each, like the first one trimmed her hair here in the bathroom, first time alone at 3 or 4. Second one, like scalped her bangs. But I'm like, right, it's just, they all have to cut their hair.
Yeah. So, but adults are the same way. And when we look at it, perspective of narcissism, lack of empathy, that extreme selfishness and self-pride, self-focus, then someone who has killed their sense of empathy is unable to learn from the pain of someone else.
You're right. They don't
it's short-circuited.
Even not even just the pain, but the lessons. Like they're not going to learn. They're going to, like, let's say they're doing criminal behavior. They're not going to look at somebody else go to jail and go, I maybe should stop that. They're going to think,
right,
I won't get caught
here. I'll re-strategize to make sure I don't get caught. Exactly. So when we're looking at it from a question of how do I love my abuser well? Typically, what we're taught in the faith community is you go home, you forgive longer, you make sure you have dinner ready on time, make sure the toys are picked up. Don't trigger his world. In other words, don't give him any reason to have to be an adult. Just manage his world around him, right? Mm-hmm. Give him more sex, make sure he never has to be losing sleep. You get up with the kids at night, you make sure the dinner's ready, you do everything you can to manage his world, which really turns you into a control freak for his self-control. So that he never has to self-regulate because he never has any speed bumps. You're off ahead of him like a curling team, smoothing the way so that he never has a speed bump.
Wow, you're right. I've never heard that. You become their self-regulator for their control.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
You become the control freak, not because you're a controlling individual, but because you are expected to control every variable in his world so that he doesn't have to self-regulate. Now, when you stop doing that, all of a sudden you see, now that can tick along pretty smooth for a while, as long as you're compliant and
as long as you're curling. As
long as you're curling.
As long as you're making that path smooth.
Exactly. But if he gets a speed bump, all hell breaks loose. You stop smoothing every rough edge so that all he feels is soft and silk, and he can't handle a scratch. He can't handle a speed bump. He can't handle having to self-regulate an adult, which means you're not married to a partner, you're married to an overgrown child. You are the only adult in the relationship, even though he controls the purse strings, he controls the decisions, he controls the debts, he controls the medical care, he controls what you do and who you see and where you go. So he makes all the decisions, but you're the only one who's actually showing maturity. Now, backing up to the whole learning and loving well. When we want to love someone well, we want them to have the greatest chance of choosing to do right and of following through for their own sake, for the sake of their character. Letting someone abuse you with impunity is not loving them well. And I am not saying this from a victim shaming. I'm not saying you're responsible for his abuse. I'm saying that if you want to love him well, staying where he gets to keep hurting you isn't loving him well, because it's continuing to let him keep hurting things. That's bad for his character. And if someone can't learn lessons and show empathy and experience pain that they have caused to someone else and change as a result of that, then that means they are the child who's committed to primary research, and they have to experience the pain themselves in order to ever have the chance to learn to hate sin and to do right.
There's a chance that doesn't happen.
And there is a very big chance that that won't happen, but it will certainly never happen as long as you are managing his whole world so that he never has to choose to do those things, choose to be a self-regulated, godly adult filled with the fruit of the Spirit.
So someone listening right now that's hearing you, but thinking, but Sara, this is my life. Like, the church will condemn me. My family will condemn me. His family will condemn me. And I'm stuck. But I know God will protect me, and I really don't need to worry.
Right. So in that kind of situation, first of all, it's not my job as a coach, as an author, speaker, trainer, to tell you that it's time to leave your marriage. That's something you have to figure out when you're ready, at the right time for you, should you choose to do that.
Correct.
Now, if you are living in an abusive situation, I really strongly encourage you to get safe.
Yes.
What that means for your marriage, whether that's separation, whether that's divorce, whether that's temporary, whether he decides to buckle down and do the work, whether you give it a couple of years and you want to see that you have done every last possible thing, or you decide, you know what, this is bad enough. I've stayed long enough. I'm done. And I have every biblical reason to be done. That's up to you, and that's between you and God. There will be people who will not understand. And that's just facts. But there is a huge tribe of wild warrior survivor women who are out there who would have your back.
Yes. And that's
walked this road. You will not be alone.
No, there's always support. I saw when I was playing on your website, you speak about safe churches, and it's wilderness to wild. And what does a wild stand for, or the acronym?
Yeah, wild, the word wild stands for not just our slogan, which is out of the wilderness and into the wild.
Okay.
But it also stands for the 4 pillars and seasons of healing. And we have an entire course that we have an online course called Shiro, Your Wild Path to Warrior After Abuse. That is a 3-month, 12-week course, 36 lessons. I mean, it's the whole thing. And we go into this into great detail. But WILD stands for, the W is for wisdom. I stands for identity. L stands for legacy. And D stands for daring. There are 4 seasons of healing. At the very beginning, you're seeking safety. And that's your wisdom season. You are asking, how do I make wise choices? What's the wise thing to do right now? And how do I get there? The second season is stability. You have to have been safe for a while before it feels like it's going to last and you're not living in just survivor hypervigilance mode anymore. And in the season of stability, you have enough bandwidth eventually to ask, okay, what is my identity? What do I stand for? Who does God say I am? Because healing requires a radical relationship with the truth. And that includes not telling yourself the lies that your abuser told you about who you are. And kind of dismantling those and parsing those out, tearing those apart. The third season is the season of strength. And that is your legacy season. As you get stronger, you get to decide, where did I come from and what do I need to let go of? So what legacy have I brought with me from my past, from my history into this? And what do I need to jettison? I'm going to drop kick some of that baggage off the top of a cliff, and I'm going to do the work to let it go so that I am the best of me. And I'm not just dragging along things that are not good and healthy in my life anymore.
Right.
Fourth season we call Shiro. And that is the season of daring. So we have wisdom, identity, legacy, and daring. And safety, stability, strength, and Shiro. Those correspond with finding clarity, courage, core values, and confidence. So we have this whole system of healing, working through all of these phases and stages, and the mindset shifts and the seasons and the questions that you ask. And in the season of daring, the question is, where do I go from here? How do I find purpose in all this pain? What can I give back to the world because of what I have survived, and help someone else so that their journey isn't quite as long or as painful as mine?
It is. And you go from that stage, I think, to turning into service. And then it just becomes this natural. Now everything that I run into that maybe isn't pleasant, and I'm like, okay, one more thing I get to share. One more person, I'm going to be able to look at them in the eye and truly say, I understand.
It's material.
It's material.
Yep,
but you just know it. You're like, okay, here comes one more lesson. Who else do I get to serve now?
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
And that goes back to that third barrier, which is her heightened conscience. So when we're talking about recognizing the best parts of who you are and repatterning your identity based on who God says you are, and what are you going to do with it? That goes back to that third barrier, because we have the insular community barrier, we have the belief systems barrier, we have the heightened conscience barrier. Very often, women who have gone through abuse were targeted because they were everything the abuser was not. You were kind, you were honest, and you were superbly loyal. And they knew that, which meant you were the perfect prey because you were unlikely to leave. You were unlikely to tattle, and you were very likely to conscientiously take on that management of his whole world. You were a great curling team partner. You were out.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. With a really heightened sense of conscience. See, we all project. So someone who's a pathological liar, they assume everyone's out to get them. They assume everyone's lying to them.
Because they lie to everybody.
Because they lie to everybody. But see, people with really, really tender conscience, we do the same thing. If you've ever woken up and looked in the mirror and heard a terrible news story of someone who did some horrible, evil thing and said, how do they even sleep at night? You're projecting your tender conscience on someone who doesn't have one.
Right. And it's just this, it's the same, even though we believe it's good intention, so we can do it, we're still doing the same thing.
Exactly. So if you are a woman who's been conscientious and driven by your faith, and you've wanted to help people, and you're loyal and you're kind and you're honest, you have assumed that all of the things that he's done to you that may have been unkind were actually from a place of loyalty and kindness and honesty, and were these anomalies. They were aberrations. They were like one times, one off. And it takes time to recognize that there's this pattern, and he doesn't have the same conscience you do.
No. And when you get that awareness, like now it took me to turn 50 to say other people's thoughts about me are none of my business.
Yes.
And then also, like, being a mother myself of 2 teenage daughters, to step back and go, they are allowed to be them. Like, I guide them, I've shown them, I've instilled in them, but now it's not my job anymore to go, this is how you're supposed to feel. This is how you're supposed to act. This is what's supposed to make you feel bad.
That goes back to that respect.
Yeah,
You can choose to be a complete jerk if you want to. It's a free country.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it when you were talking about God and him wanting us to love him. I'm like, and it's the same thing as the parent. I want my daughters to love me because they love me, not because I tell them to, not because I threaten them.
Right. Absolutely.
And I have to say, I love you have written, I at the end will list all your but your website's amazing. But I love your book. I think it's a book. Myths We Believe, Predators We Trust.
It's a book.
And that title is so strong. And I have to say, and talking to many women over years, some of the most scared have a very powerful, influential husband that's either in a church or in a spiritual that almost has this cult-like following, and they're terrified. I've seen other women step up, in some form of working with the Christian women in their church as far as abuse or fear. They get the strongest following and the fastest because it's like a secret society, that they're like, I felt like this and didn't think anybody else would understand.
Right.
And it's just something I think needs attention. And I just didn't have the words. I had the feelings and the belief, but I don't have the words that you do.
Right. That book is one of several that we have. And it was a really incredible book to write. It's a collaborative, it's a co-write with Darren Pratt, who does abuse recovery work and child safety work in Australia. So we worked together on that, and it's laid out. My designer did an amazing job. It's laid out like a magazine. It's a book, but it's full color. And it has the myth that is super common. And then it has 2 or 3 paragraphs underneath with what the actual truth is. And then it references scripture, science, scientific studies, data, research, authors, podcasts, and other places that you can go to get further information on that. So it's a perfect book, actually.
Sorry. Of course. I just got a package. The dog's going to start barking. You're good. It's good. Okay. We're good.
No, I'm amazed. I haven't had kids pop in yet. But it's the perfect book to buy a dozen of and give them to all of your church leaders, because it's a great introduction, and it's done in a really low intimidation, non-threatening way. Now, the Safe Churches book, it's heavy duty. Like, it's a full-on training book, and it goes deep into understanding the concepts of abuse and how to handle abuse, and what if it's got criminal elements, and what do you do, and how the church should respond, and the beliefs about forgiveness and these myths that we have. So it's a heavier book, but Myths We Believe, Predators We Trust is really straightforward and very visual, as are the systems of abuse, the systems of love and honor, and the abuse advocacy guide. All of those.
So much. I love your merchandise. Your apparel is really, really cute.
Thank you.
I love it.
I love all those designs myself.
Did you? I love it. I was like shopping just before you were to come on. I was like, okay, wait, I'm not shopping. Stop. Go back. You're researching.
Stop. It's great. All of those go to support our team. so that we can create and provide the free or nearly free resources for women who are impoverished, for women who don't have access to finances. So all of those free library of resources, the merchandise helps to fund that. So
well, I could talk to you all day. I'm thinking, sitting here thinking too, that and I love men. I'm not trying to label men, but I'm wondering, because so many faith-based, or not faith-based, with the customs where the man is in charge and gives him that little, but
yeah.
you think of, I wonder if they rely on that, knowing she won't leave, our belief system won't let her leave, our culture won't let her leave, she's too scared to leave, and it makes you that prey.
I think it goes even deeper than that. In some circumstances, certainly not all. And I feel like I should also, there are so many wonderful men.
That's what I mean. Like, this isn't about this is a niche down, a scared woman.
Yes.
That has a strong faith, or she's struggling to leave it. This is a niche down, not a general topic. And I'm even thinking the men that are, the young boys that are raised in that home and go on to be a man and treat another woman, and he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Exactly. See, and that's what I was going to say. I think it goes deeper than that, because if you're raised to believe that by creative design, women don't have the mental processing power or the emotional stability, the whole kind of protect the little woman from the truth, we won't tell her what's going on, she couldn't handle it, that kind of idea. If you're raised to believe that women don't have the brain for finances, that women can't, they're too emotional to make decisions, that women aren't created by God with the capacity, then you may end up believing that you are doing the right thing because it's how you've been conditioned and taught. Is it toxic? Yes. Is it abusive? Yes. Is it dangerous and demoralizing and completely against God? Yes. The question is, when you are face to face with that, will you say, I'm ready to do the work to change and become a good, safe, healthy man? Or will you say, heck no, I'm not losing all this system?
No. It'd be like those women, those people that you're like, you can eat anything you want and stay thin. You'd be like, I mean, it's why would I give that up?
Why would I give that up? Because this system is working for me really well. And I like the power and I like the control and I like having the charge of everything. And I don't have any desire to give that up.
No, and I'm sure they've attained for years. They watched their grandfather have it, their dad have it. Now they're finally the patriarch themselves, and they're like, I'm finally the king of my castle. And they've waited a long time to step into that power.
It's not just the religious community, though.
No. I meant in general that men.
Right, but if you think about a lot of popular music, there's a ton of degradation of women.
Oh, yeah.
There's a ton of just using women for male satisfaction and gratification and pleasure, instead of seeing women as whole, complete partners who are also equally made in the image of God. And I really think that that's where it wraps back around to. If we were going to end on one positive note, it would be that as women, we are made equally in God's image. And the beauty of freedom in the faith community that we should be experiencing is that God has created you in his image, equal, whole, complete, and deserving of honor and love and respect and safety just as much as any man, not any less than.
No.
And it's not that men are bad. It's that abusive behavior patterns are dangerous and they are not like God. Whether, and there's going to be some women who listen to this and they had really abusive moms or grandmas or aunts or sisters. So whether the perpetrator of abuse is male or female, abusive behavior systems are not of God. And you have God's blessing to seek safety and then figure out what your future is going to look like.
Yes. And that is a great place to end. And we will have everything listed in the show notes, all your links and your website. But it seems to me, and I didn't really, research, but it seems like your website would be a safe place or a spot that they can come to find safe places just to get knowledge, just to get education.
Yes, so we have a number of resource links. We have a ton of giveaway resources. Our giveaways library is one of the biggest out there, and those are all original resources or links to curated collections of things, book links, articles, podcasts, stuff that is healthy and safe. And we also have online courses and workshops.
They're very affordable, by the way, for people looking.
Yes, thank you. That we try to keep them very affordable, very reasonably priced, especially for the amount of content that is delivered in them. They're incredibly comprehensive. And yet we still try to keep them very bite-sized, even though they're very comprehensive, because we know that trauma fog can make it difficult to comprehend. Things are complicated. So
you know what I think is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. We have support communities for neurodivergent trauma mamas, for trauma mamas, for betrayal trauma, for those who are in extreme crisis and need a secret safe place. We have a vetting process for the secret safe ones. So we have those communities, we have coaching, and we have the online courses and all of the libraries.
What I was going to say about the courses too, because I really encourage people to go to your website. It was beautifully laid out, and our merchandise is super cute, but it was affordable. But the two things on that are, A, when someone's in an emotional or abusive relationship or a scared place, a big purchase can put that under the spotlight. High ticket price. Like, what did you buy? What is this? Where yours, the little ones, it wouldn't show up on a radar on most people's finances, and it is bite size. It's something you could just go to the park or the coffee shop and get knowledge, and you're not going to bring this huge amount of attention to, like, I purchased this. You do have courses too, but I meant the little bite size.
Right. Yeah. We keep a very affordable range. So we have those who are ready to invest in like longer healing and a bigger course, but we also have monthly memberships. We have monthly podcast memberships. Some of those are like $7. Some of them are like 27. We have the wild
Facebook group.
We have free Facebook groups. The Facebook groups are all free.
Yeah.
We have the wellness habit development for helping to rebuild after trauma fog, and just a lot of variety of things so that you can choose what's best for you right now.
Yeah. Well, I hope that people go check it out, or the women, because I'm going to go back when we're done. And I know one person, I'm sure, sending it to when we're done. And I picture, if you go to our merchandise, you have this little like snuggly wrap with angel wings, that with the coffee cup, and like watching one of your, programs would be just a beautiful, nourishing, comforting place for anyone to land.
That's our goal. It's exactly our goal. We have like these fleecy hooded blankets. We have these Sherpa blankets that we have with these cozy sweatshirts and really fun t-shirts that are kind of snarky, and all of the mugs and everything that we do, again, because of that neurodivergence and that sensory stuff that is part of PR, is soft and warm and cozy. There's this Norwegian or Danish word for it called hygge, that is where everything is just cozy and calm and comforting.
It's like an adult baby store. Like, you know how you always see the soft little baby wraps, and you're like, I want one of these.
Candles and cups of hot cocoa and a soft blanket and low light and twinkly stuff. And that's just,
So I would encourage, or go just shop to support Sara and her cause. Like you said, and it's a great place to pick something up for a girlfriend or a sister or someone maybe going through a hard time, you can wrap them in some angel wings of comfort in many multiple ways by going to her website.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It was great to have words put to the thoughts, because I didn't have them, and I appreciate yours.